High School Cthulhu is a tabletop RPG written by Simone Raspi and Mattia Arnaldo of Gear Games out of Italy. It puts you in the shoes of teenagers attending a high school in the fictional town of Innsmouth, in a world where all of H.P. Lovecraft's monsters, gods, and aliens are real. In the tradition of Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood, Kids on Bikes, and Kids on Whatever, you're meant to traipse around town to solve a mystery, while also grappling with teen drama, and since this is Lovecraft, potential madness. At the time of recording, this game is crowdfunding on BackerKit. I'll leave a link below. In this video, I want to walk you through the quick start for this game and give you my thoughts on the overall mechanics, setting, and presentation, as well as my wish list since this isn't a full game yet. This is a sponsored video, but as always, I just say whatever I want. I think the most important thing to note up front is that this game's rules are based squarely on the system designed by Two Little Mice. If you've seen my videos on Broken Compass, Household, or Outgunned, you'll be familiar with the matching dice system. It's a cool system, very unique and fast. They call the rule set Director's Cut. I'll cover the actual mechanics later in the video. So here are the main conceits of the theme of this game. You're a high school student, it's the 90s, you live in a town called Innsmouth. Yes, that Innsmouth, where the events of The Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft transpired in the 1930s. If you haven't read that story, it's one of his all-time classics, and it's where Deep Ones and Dagon come from. Anyway, it says here that the tone of the game is jovial and mocking, and media touchstones include Beverly Hills 90210, Dawson's Creek, and Riverdale, among others. If you haven't watched any of these kinds of shows, they're basically soap operas, but involving teenager level and caliber problems and drama, and there's always drama. Of course, this game also has a very heavy layer of Cthulhu mythos slapped on top. In fact, the Cthulhu mythos monsters and intrigue are really the main source of the action in this game. Here are a couple more shows that channel the desired look and feel of gameplay: Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Roswell. If you're on the younger side of the millennial generation or younger, these shows probably are a little past your time, and I largely wouldn't recommend going back and watching them, with the exception of Buffy. That show was not only very special from beginning to end, it really does embody the spirit of this game in the sense that you're a small band of teenagers battling the supernatural. The mechanics of the game basically work like this. You have 20 skills sorted under 4 core attributes. Those attributes can be rated 1 or 2, and each skill can be rated 1 through 4. Anytime you're trying to do something or react to something, you combine any one attribute's score with any one skill score, and that's how many d6s you get to roll for that test. I'll be honest with you, the attribute plus skill combination approach that some games have really requires a bit of practice before you get a good feel for the right combination to use in any given situation. And even when you get used to it, there's always still room for interpretation. Like most RPGs, it takes 2 or 3 sessions before you're just comfortable with the core mechanics, and then you never think twice about them again. But for example, in this game, if you wanted to shoot a gun, the suggested attribute and skill combination is street smarts plus cool, but firing a bow or crossbow is brawn plus aim. It's noted that these are just suggestions and you can come up with other combinations for the same actions, but if you think about it, that really opens up the door for min-maxer types to exploit the game's mechanics and create discord with GMs who might be expecting everyone to play in good faith. If you don't know the kind of player I'm talking about here, just keep playing RPGs with different people, you'll run into one soon enough. The quick start details all the steps for creating a character. Let's walk through this real quick. First, you pick your name. Our pregen's name is Steve McClung. The next step is to pick your style. There are 6 high school archetypes listed: the jock, cheerleader, nerd, goth, self-made, and rebel. Our one pregen is a jock, so Steve is an athlete, presumably a good one. He gets a point in the brawn attribute and 1 skill point for every one of these 10 skills. You get to pick one of these 3 traits. Note your equipment, which in this game is largely divided into what you have on your person and what you keep at home, which is to say your party is not going to be straying too far from home. Everything should take place in a single town with maybe some dimension hopping or something, but always returning to a location relatively close to your house. And then you pick a journey, of which there are 2 available for the jock. The journey is sort of like a pre-written generic backstory, and it comes loaded with more mechanical bonuses. In the case of the one example journey provided, the champion, our character Steve bears the heavy burden of high expectations as an athlete. You get a point in the smooth attribute and 10 more skill points to distribute amongst these 10 skills. And then you will pick 2 journey-based traits. The next step is to pick a guardian. This doesn't necessarily have to be a parent. It can be anyone in the character's life, typically an adult who they can rely on. We'll cover what happens in the game when you actually choose to rely on a guardian in a minute. The next step is to choose a bond. This is one connection your character will make with another PC in the party. It could be a positive or a negative connection. And you're meant to have a mutual agreement with the other player about this, so it involves a little bit of communication with the other player. The next step is to choose an anchor. This is very similar to a guardian, but it is one that is completely narrative in nature and controlled by the GM. It's meant as a lever that the GM can use to stir the pot or assist players that's more connected to the PCs than just a random PC. The next step is to sort out attribute and skill points. If you recall, we got 10 skill points from our style, 10 from our journey, and 1 attribute from each of those as well. And here we will add 2 more skill points wherever we want. The next step is our story. This is just a few sentences about our backstory or whatever. The next step is inventory. As mentioned, your gear is divided into what you can carry and what you can store at home. And then you choose your traits. We actually sorted out traits already, but this is where you'd officially do it. And finally, you mark 1 guts point and 1 miracle. These are both forms of metacurrency meant to give players a way to fudge dice rolls and bend the scene to their will. Guts are supposed to be spent and awarded freely in this game, which is to say, this is not meant to be a mechanically strict or harsh game. The goal is to get through a fun story together without a string of awful rolls arresting the plot or leaving everyone dead or dying. Miracles are the more rare metacurrency. I wasn't able to work out how a player gains more of these. I know your character starts with 1. My biggest worry here is that these are way too powerful. I understand and agree with the inclusion of the metacoins like Guts, which give you a +1 here or a quantum gear item there, but these miracles can completely subvert a scene in a way that might not be satisfying to anyone but the player who uses them. Alright, so this is how the dice actually work if you're not familiar with the Two Little Mice Director's Cut system. Anytime you're trying to do something, you choose any attribute and any skill and roll that many d6s. If you're using regular dice, you're disregarding the numbers and just trying to get matching sets. If you're using the specialty dice, then you are completely concentrating on matching sets all the same. If you're reacting to something that is happening to your character, then the GM picks the attribute and skill combo. There are essentially 5 different difficulty levels on any check, and they are labeled thus. Just note here that you don't need these specific symbols. Any 2 of a kind is a base success, any 3 of a kind is a critical success, etc. The fun part of this system happens here. You can trade 3 of a lower success into 1 of a higher success, and you can down convert a higher success into 3 of a lower success. That last bit is important because with extra successes beyond what the roll called for, you can trade them for things like guts points, extra actions, and successes for other party members. I find this to be a very generous application of extra successes. So generous, in fact, that I don't even think you need those miracle points. And besides, there's already the so-called non-Euclidean success, which is when you roll a 6 of a kind and can basically become the GM for a round. Re-rolling is another huge component of this system where players can choose to re-roll any dice that don't contribute to a set. You have to have rolled at least 1 pair on the first roll, but if you did, then you can re-roll the unsuccessful dice and try to enhance that original success or create new sets. If you succeed in doing that, then you can apply all the successes to the check. If you fail on your re-roll though, then you lose 1 success from the first roll. But it gets even more casino-like. After any re-roll, you can re-roll unsuccessful dice a second time, this time risking all your previous successes. It's as crazy as it sounds. There's no narrative reasoning or setting justification for it. Your characters aren't chronomancers or anything. You just get to gamble a lot with each roll. It looks like the authors here took another page from Two Little Mice and discussed what failure could look like. I really like this approach to GMing, where a failed roll doesn't always mean that the PC failed to do the thing. Instead, there are situations where a desired action or reaction is still accomplished, but they will pay a price later. A couple of the failure alternatives even have a mechanical element, such as loss of grit, which are the game's hit points more or less, in certain situations, and damage containment, where you can mitigate the damage of a failure with extra successes. But alright, so about grit. There is a track on your character sheet where you can record incoming psychological or physical damage. Every time you reach one of these critical checkboxes, the PC will take on a condition that the GM chooses based on the situation. When you fill up the track and then exceed it, you're knocked out of action until it makes sense to get you back. Recovering grit is accomplished by getting time to yourself or resting. There is some guidance a few pages later in the quick start about where and how grit and condition recovery would actually work. As far as conditions, your character can have up to 3, after which time they take the broken condition, which confers -1 to all dice rolls. I'd actually like to see more of an explanation of the ins and outs of conditions, but you don't get that in this quick start. Just in case you were wondering, combat generally works like this. If you're trying to attack, you choose your attack method, which includes choosing or making a case for an attribute plus skill combo. Then roll against the difficulty of the defense of the target. So if you're attacking a group of possessed humans, for example, and their defense is listed as critical, that means you need to roll a 3 of a kind to land a hit. Each success of that kind will remove 1 grit from the target. When it's the enemy's turn, you will be rolling again. This time, you choose the right or most appropriate attribute and skill combo, then roll against the enemy's listed attack difficulty. Each enemy will have their own consequences in the event of a failed defense roll on your part. There are 2 unique tracks in this game that you're working with, which tie this game to its actual theme of high schoolers fighting Cthulhu mythos stuff. The first is the Spiral of Madness track. Anytime your character deals with the occult or anything really grisly, they make a madness roll. You roll the number of non-blacked checkboxes in your PC's madness track. Depending on the difficulty of the test, you will lose either 1, 3, 9, or all of your remaining grit if you had more than 9. And you would also blacken 2 more Spiral of Madness boxes, which of course will make your next madness roll even more challenging. Just like the grit track, there are critical boxes, and when you get to filling one of those, your character suffers a minor, then a moderate, and finally a major disorder. I see this crop up in so many games where mental health is on the line. As your character gets progressively more damaged psychologically, the player is supposed to ramp up the roleplay of all these different mental health issues like hallucinations, bouts of rage, and euphoria. I don't see this game design approach particularly easy to actually play, nor is it fun to endure other players performing out these kinds of ailments at the table. As an alternative, it would be nice to just have some mechanical penalties levied on the player as they accumulate these 3 levels of disorders. Okay, so the other unique track in this game that everyone is filling over the course of play is the drama track. This one is a shared track, and it has 12 points, which are filled when certain kinds of events take place. For example, if you damaged, destroyed, or lost something that you borrowed from an adult, like Dad's car, then the drama track will increase by 1. If a party member loses all their grit and gets knocked out, that's 1 drama. Or, here we go, if you invoke the influence or help of your guardian, you actually cost the party 2 drama points. Just like the other tracks in the game, there are critical boxes where something is triggered. At 3 drama, a bond between 2 PCs changes dramatically. At 6 drama, a guardian appears at the worst possible time. When the track fills all the way up, the party all gets into a fight, all the bonds are rewritten, everyone gains 1 guts point, which I take to mean they lose a point, given the circumstance, and they mark 1 box in the Spiral of Madness. So I wanted to discuss the sample adventure that comes with this quick start. It's always tough because I never want to spoil any of the elements of an adventure, and I'm not going to do so here. But I do have to point out that it centers around one of my absolute favorite, if not my very favorite Lovecraft story, but adds so much more to it and couches it in a surprisingly meaty and complex teen mystery. Just generally speaking, it's really well written and designed. I don't ever have high expectations of quick start sample adventures, but this one was pretty special in terms of its writing as well as its visual representation. This makes me very hopeful that the second book that they are crowdfunding, beside the core rulebook, an adventure supplement called Extracurricular Horrors, will contain a lot of quality adventures and adventure ideas. So alright, here are my thoughts on the High School Cthulhu quick start. Cons. Loose approach to attribute plus skill mechanic. This could lead to exploitation, as mentioned, or at the very least, some confusion or argument. I actually have a solution to this that I'll mention in a minute. Miracles might be a bit too powerful. There are already a lot of soft spots in the game where players can massage the rules and the narrative quite a bit. The insanely powerful miracles might be a bridge too far. I think I'd try to run this game for a few sessions without the miracles just to see how it would play. Disorders need a purely mechanical alternative. Like I mentioned, I really try to steer away from players acting out mental illnesses that get progressively worse over time. It's not only offensive for obvious reasons, it's super cringy most of the time and can be very taxing on the players themselves. An alternative would just be dice or other mechanical penalties levied on the PC as their mental condition worsens. Pros. Familiar theme, fresh approach. Although I can't name any RPGs off the top of my head that specifically tackle Cthulhu mythos and teenagers as the two dominant themes, I feel like this marriage of concepts can be accomplished with a number of beloved teenager RPGs on the market these days. But the visually colorful high school notebook design and the fast, fresh mechanics of Two Little Mice's dice system do make this game feel like something new and interesting. The spiral of madness and drama tracks do feel like maybe they've been sort of bolted on, but the game is lighthearted in general, and intricate mechanics are not what the authors are going for anyway. Story-forward mechanics. Guts, miracles, re-rolling, and all or nothing re-rolls puts initial dice rolls results and even final dice rolls in the back seat and puts sheer will of the player and what they want to do with the story in the front seat. This is story first in all its unashamed glory, which is nice when you want to just complete a mystery without having to need a backup character or two. Adventure design. As I mentioned a minute ago, I thought the 30-something page sample adventure was really imaginative and brilliantly conceived. If the adventure supplement being crowdfunded alongside the core rulebook is anything like it, then that's a solid value proposition and maybe even a critical component of the game itself. If I had a magic wand, I'd conjure up a few additions to this game. Here's my wish list. A hard and fast list of attribute plus skill combos. The quick start gives you maybe 15 or so combos that offer some solid guidance on how to translate actions and reactions into dice rolls. But I'd like to see a comprehensive example list for maybe 50 common actions. That way a complete beginner GM could refer to it, at least for their first few sessions, to get a foundation of how to interpret combinations. More styles or archetypes. There are 6 listed high school archetypes for the game, and each come with a unique set of traits. I wish they would just lean in hard and expand the traits to the point that they end up with 10 or 12 character archetypes. I know that's what expansion books later down the line are for, but it would be really cool to see that up front in the core rulebook. PC secrets. I did a video about player secrets a while back where I included PC secrets in a game of Vaesen I was running. It added so much to the session, and I made a point that in a lot of these mystery type games, PC secrets are a huge way to give players direction during a campaign and ultimately build up to an especially fun and interesting finale or series of reveals. Each high schooler in this game should be harboring a secret that motivates their behavior, and maybe there should be some mechanical or narrative rewards for maintaining that secret or carrying it to fruition if there's a victory state for it. But yeah, that's the High School Cthulhu Quick Start. You can download the actual Quick Start for free at the BackerKit site, which I'll leave a link for down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game, especially if you've been able to playtest it. Thanks as always for watching. See ya.